Alright, so this is just a trial run. I just downloaded Trainz Railroad Simulator 2019 the other day, and I'm really excited to get back into it. I did start on a route that I've wanted to do for a long time, and I finally got around to doing it. So let's get into it. It's the NS Detroit District. And okay, so we're going to be starting on the east end of the layout, which of course this is not finished whatsoever, but one of the things that I am still trying to learn is what buildings I have available, what I need to get, and what I should use, and that's the biggest thing is learning what the names and remembering them. And I know you can set up filters, and I've tried that a little bit, but I haven't really made like a complete like pick list yet. So while I'm still working on all that, that's kind of one of the things is when you're looking at the buildings, you're not, even if you search for it, you may not necessarily find what you're looking for. Maybe I'll find an example at some point and I can show you, but that's why it is important if you do find something that you like to at least lay it down on the layout or add it to your pick list. So that's the closest thing I could find. I think this is like an airport tower, but it kind of gives that vibe for a control tower, and the brick on it actually does look a lot like the one that would be in Oakwood Yard. So I kind of developed this practice now since I started, where if I see it and it's something I think I can use, I will add it to the layout. But what's really nice in Trainz 2019 that was not available on earlier versions is you can zoom out and you can see the whole map. And that makes it easy to move, especially depending on how big the layout is, which this isn't that big. I mean, it's okay, it's big, but I'm sure there are a lot larger layouts. And I'm not really sure just how much I want to load into one, especially for it being my first. And so I don't want to bite off more than I can chew to start off. Plus, I want this to be, I wasn't looking for this to be a like super 2 scale version. I wanted this to be more something that could be fun to just run a train, and it may only take 40 minutes to get across the line. So that's what I'm going for. And because for the last few years now, I've been watching YouTube videos where I see people building layouts, and they're doing it on a smaller scale. They're scaling things down, they're compressing, but it looks like a lot of fun because you're not traveling 80 scale miles from place to place. So I really like that. All right, so I guess for this initial video, for this just being a test trial for using screen record and all that, and oh gosh, I really do hope it's recording, but let's just go from east to west, and I will cover what I have so far. Starting at Oakwood. This is Oakwood Yard. It is a much larger yard in real life. So what you're not seeing right here, this is the manifest yard, but what you're not seeing is that there are tracks that come along on this side I think there's probably about 10 tracks on this side of the yard, but I think we're gonna have to scale that down. So probably more like 6 tracks on this side, or maybe less than that. Maybe 5. 5's a good number. I like odd numbers. And then they'll continue on towards Detroit. I don't know how far I'll go. If I'll go all the way to the boat yard, that's still up in the air right now. But this would be the west end of the yard. That is where the tower is. There is fairly certain it is a railroad owned transload facility. And then Oakwood Junction. Oakwood Junction is a interchange and Diamond Crossing with the CN now, but originally it was the Detroit, Toledo, and Ironton, and then that became the Grand Trunk before becoming the CN. And from what I can gather, pre-2000, pre-Conrail merger, most Norfolk Southern traffic was funneled into Detroit, and a lot of it was interchanged to the DT&I here. At Oakwood Junction, there was an interchange yard, there still is, and still active today. A lot of auto parts traffic was interchanged right here to go to the Ford Dearborn plant and the Rouge plant in Dearborn. And so I want that to be a big feature of the layout, is having this interchange. It is a double track line, and since I'm doing it pre-2000, well, actually, let's say pre-2002, it'll be during the Conrail merger period, and that way I can run Conrail and the NS and the Conrail patch, Conrail patched engines and all that. That's what when I was growing up, that's the time period that I noticed the most, I saw the most, and so that's what I want to kind of do here. But because of that, there were so many upgrades that took place after that, after 2004 even, signaling wise and whatnot, that this right here, this is in current day, this is bi-directional CTC, but back before 2004, it was directional. NS Rule 251, which was essentially signal territory that was running in a single direction, and if for whatever reason a train was operating on the opposite track, running, let's say, wrong main, they had to do so with track authority, with a written track authority, and I believe at restricted speed. I'll have to look at the rule, but that's what I'm going to do on this. So essentially, all trains would operate in a westbound direction. They would go on this track right here and not the other track. Okay, so we will start moving west now. Right about here is where Taylor is, and a lot of the railroad employees would call it Taylortown. It was a large industrial park, and there was a siding, which nowadays it's Stubbs on the east end of the siding, but a lot of warehouses were served right through here, and that continued on. There was a small branch line as you came into Romulus. There was a branch line right here, and then as you approach the airport, there was a chemical, it's RKA, or it was RKA Petroleum, a transload facility right here, so I'm going to have that. The airport would be right in this area right here. That's Detroit Metro Airport. I will somehow fit that in. I don't know how I'm going to do that just yet. I back in the day there was an airport object that you could have, and it had animated airplanes going in and out, but I don't know, it wasn't really that I guess you could say it didn't really look that realistic. So just beyond the airport, there begins a siding that is on the south side of the tracks. There's one industry that comes off of that siding, and then that siding continues on towards the Pure Marquette, the CNO CSX Diamond in Romulus. That siding, as far as I can remember from my childhood, has always been used to store cars, auto racks mostly, and in recent years, a lot of box cars, a lot of auto parts box cars. So that siding is something that I remember a lot of. And then if you continue west from there, you do cross the CNO, and then you'd proceed on to through Romulus, and then you'd proceed over Interstate 275, and then you come to another industrial park right here. This was known as Kelsey Hayes, the Hayes Wheels Company that would make auto parts for, I believe it was for General Motors. And at one point, way back in the day, it was a military. It made military, manufactured military items. In fact, you can still see guard towers at the ends of the property. So one thing that I have never really done when I've done a layout in Trainz is gradients, and that's something that I was starting to work with in this, because I did want essentially to the Huron River, the line goes down grade from Romulus to the Huron River crossing. So I brought the line to give it that effect. I brought the gradient down, and then tried to smooth out the slope. So there is a drop, if I can angle it right. If you can kind of see it. And then once you get down to the lowest point, which is the Huron River, this is the area that I kind of was testing out. I downloaded CL trees from the download station, and I like them so far, and I think I'll go with those. There is a dam which dams Belval Lake, that actually created Belval Lake, and then the Huron River that comes out of that. And I was able to find something that very close, this building right here. So I think this thing is going to look really cool. It's going to look very close to the prototype when it's all said and done. And there's still a lot of work to do on the lake and the river. There's an industry that is located here. This is actually known as French Landing, even though it's not an actual city. It's just an area that had a marina, and then it had Huron Valley Steel, which had two industry tracks that came off of the main track. It had a scrap yard. I believe it was like an electric furnace to melt down scrap metal. And as a child, I remember that a lot. So I think this building is going to fit it well. And then I'll find, what I'd like to find is a texture for scrap metal, so that I can make scrap metal piles in the back here. And then continuing west, this will be Belval, and this was also the end of the double track. This is where it became single track. This is also where you would leave the Rule 251 territory and I believe it. I don't know what the other rule was called, but basically your automatic block signals, ABS territory, and CTC. Belval is also the first curve in the layout on the main line as well in real life. It's a long sweeping curve, and so I tried my best to keep it that way, even though the route is going to be compressed. I did want this particular scene to be somewhat to give that effect of a long sweeping curve, so that you could maintain speed while passing through. This is also probably the most detail I've done, most scenery I've done on the layout so far, is right here. Again, I've tried to do super elevate. I guess I haven't touched on that yet. I'm working on doing super elevation, and this will be part of the super elevation right here that you're seeing. That is becoming that's a learning curve for me because I've never done that before, but I really do like it, and I will continue doing that all the way throughout the entire layout. And then after you get through the long sweeping curve in Belval, the scenery kind of drops off. I do have grass texture down, but it's going to go down to the baseboard here pretty shortly. There was another spur that came off and Willis, and that ran to Rawsonville, where there was and it still is today, a Balcomatic terminal, Georgia Pacific, and then at one point there was a Ford Auto Parts business located there. And I believe in the early 2000s, it would still have been active, so I will try to model that. Again, we're single track, but that ends. You come to the next siding in Milan. This would actually be located. This is Whitaker right here, and you're going to have this was a decent sized siding, and Milan, which is the town that it's coming up to, it had a lot of industry. It also had an interchange with another short line railroad. There were two industries right here that I'm trying to find the right buildings for, that I haven't really quite found the right buildings for just yet. But I know this one right here, this one spurs off and almost turns around in completely the other direction. And I believe that was an auto. I believe that was for auto parts for. It was a plastics plant that molded auto parts. And then I'm actually quite proud of this because this is Milan right here. I found a building that I think fits it very well. Milan had two small yards, one on the Ann Arbor Railroad, one on the NS. A few tracks, and then plus the connection track to do interchange with the Ann Arbor Railroad. This is also the local base for two of the local trains that are seen on the railroad in real life. One thing I'm going to try to do is model the track as it looks from Google Maps, which is it just kind of goes off into the weeds and then disappears. I'm going to continue west after that. You come to the end of Milan siding, and then shortly after that, we come to Britain. At this point, you're on flat land, and it's pretty much open farmland at this. To try to break up the boringness that it would be, I'm going to add hills in the background and try to put up trees, because it's not completely flat. There are trees and whatnot that break up each scene in real life too. So, but in Britain there is a grain elevator. It is single track until you reach Raisin Center. That's going to be another section of double track. Raisin Center is the east end of Adrian. And then for Adrian, there are several curves that you go through. Adrian had a small yard, 3 tracks, not used very often at all. There is interchange with the Adrian and Blissfield Railroad. There are 2 interchanges with the Adrian and Blissfield. There was the Gulf Street interchange, which was more for single car interchange. And then there was Page, which is just to the west of that. Page was where it still is today, where the majority of traffic is interchanged with the ADBF. Another interesting feature here will be grain trains, which are interchanged. It's the only source for grain trains that you'll see on the Detroit district east of Montpelier. And just to add to it, we do have the Adrian and Blissfield line as it spurs back to their main line. And then over here, there's going to be an engine house, which I actually did find a great engine house for. But I don't know if I'm going to remember what it was under. But I do have it. I did place it on the layout. As I said before, a great idea is if you do see something that you're going to like, at least add it to your layout, because you may not remember what it was called when you go back to find it later on. And that's something. I do have it somewhere. I will find it. Once I do, I'll be able to copy it and bring it over here. Continuing west after Page, we come to, I believe this was called Sand Creek. And then we'll go back to single track here. And then it continues on until you reach Morenci, North Morenci. This is actually something that is, when I got to this point, I decided I needed to download to model switch heaters, propane tanks, and motorized switches. So I've got all that here now. Basically what you would see at a control point. This particular one is actually missing its switch heater. So something I'm still trying to get used to is sometimes I make progress and then I think that I've saved it and I didn't, and then it's gone next time I come back. And I think this is one of those situations where that happened, but I do have the switch heater. It's easy to find. So this was from, oh, that was it. It's going to be right there. So let's add that guy in since we're here. So that switch heater would be located on this side, so that this particular plate right here covers the switch mechanism. And that also means that the propane tank's on the wrong side of the tracks right now. Let's move that to the right side. There we go. I think that should be good for that. I'm not going to do a whole lot of editing in this video. This was just more of a trial run. If you look at aerial shots of Morenci siding, the track actually splits away. And I believe that in most cases when you see something like that, it is because they placed a signal between the siding and the main, and that's what I've done here too. This should be with the main track being here and this being a siding track. Unlike double track territory, that signal will be right to the right hand side, and that would be why they split the tracks apart. So just like in the prototype, I've done my best to model that. And then we're going to keep going west here. There's not too much more at this point, but this would be the other end of Morenci. And then there's another industry that comes up. Oh, if I can zoom out just enough. There we go. I forgot. I did have the name of the industry, but I don't. Oh, Wilbur Ellis. That's what it was. Wilbur Ellis. And that's in Elberton, Ohio. I think this is going to be a close representation of Wilbur Ellis. And that would have been agriculture, chemicals, fertilizers. I don't know how often they get rail service. Starting right here at Elberton, you can see I've got my ruler. That this is a big help to keep tracks straight, especially when you have single track, because unlike the splines and trains, which will bend, the rulers will not. So that is a great way to keep your track straight. And then we come to Elberton siding, East End Elberton siding. I got the switch heaters here. Do not have the signals just yet, but I do have the motorized switch and switch heaters in place. And then there's not much to see there. Going to keep going west towards Montpelier. Right about here is I think this is mode, and at mode, the siding at mode, there's also an industry that comes off. This is the Menards distribution center, and there's actually a great building for this, if I can remember. No, it wasn't called Menards. It was a lumber yard, and it was perfect for this. Well, that's also, I'm going to lay those down. As I said, even if you don't necessarily know where they're going to go just yet, lay them down, and that way you can come back to them later on once you are ready to. Oh, maybe I'm not going to be able to find it right now. Yep, but that's fine. That's not the purpose of this video. So anyways, that is modern day Menards. I don't know if that was there in the early 2000s, but I like it. It's a big industry, and for Norfolk Southern, it was a major customer. And so what I'm going to do is do a little history on Menards, and if not, maybe find an older company like HQ or Home Depot, something like that, to make that just kind of proto-lance that a little bit. There's another industry that came off right there, and then we come to the east end of Montpelier, just as in the prototype. For whatever reason, they constructed the switch to split almost equally on either side. So that's what I've done here, to the best of my abilities, to keep it prototypical. Montpelier was a much larger yard at one point. It's down to only a few tracks. There is no shops anymore. It's not even a crew change point. It is an interchange with the Indiana Northeastern Railroad. The Indiana Northeastern, I believe, serves a grain elevator to the east of town, and then joins the NS at Montpelier Yard. And then they eventually split away at the west end, and this would have been a major interchange yard, another base for local trains. This is a lot of traffic that is interchanged to the Adrian Blissfield Railroad and Adrian. That is classified here, so this will add to the operations of the layout. This station right here, it looks, based on memory, it looks a lot like the station in Montpelier, so I laid that down there. I believe that's going to look pretty good once scenery has been added to this. Moving towards the west, this is where the layout will end, just west of Montpelier. And again, back here is where I was first experimenting with the super elevation. So at this point, Montpelier is the furthest west this layout will go, and that would be where all trains start or end, depending on which scenario that you are using. And then the last thing that I wanted to cover in this first installment, I've got to go back. Again, I really do like this feature that Trainz 2019 added here, where you can zoom out really far. It is a major help, especially when you're trying to move across the layout. I believe that right there, as I said before, this is a perfect example of the Adrian and Blissfield engine house. I laid it down here with that intention. I'm going to use the copy object button. This tool here will find the object that you're clicking on in the menu, and then you can zoom out and you can quickly skip to where you need to go to add it in. And I think that's going to make doing this a lot easier. But that's an example of what I was saying with lay it down. You can find it later as long as you have it on your layout. And that's all there is to that. So thank you for watching. This will be my first, hopefully the first of many. And in the following videos, I will get more in depth into actual building, scenery, and whatnot with this layout and other layouts in the future. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.